I'm Sydney Bowles, B News news producer, and we're here for another edition of our monthly superintendent update, where we talk about all things Burlington Public Schools. This is a very special month because we're joined not only by the Superintendent Dr. Conti, as we always are, but also by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Chen. So Dr. Conti, Dr. Chen, thank you both very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Sydney, thank you.
So we're going to dive right in.
Yep.
The first thing I want to ask you about is there's been a job posting for a DEI position that's been something that's been talked about for a long time in the district. For a little bit of background, this was a position that has been vacant. I think there was somebody in the role in 2022, and this position was discussed as a way to fill that role, but the title now is Lead Instructional Coach for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the High School, not DEI director. So I was hoping we could talk about how this came about, what the differences in those titles are, and how you guys are thinking about this new role. So Dr. Conti, do you want to start?
Sure, and I'll maybe try to do a little bit of logistics here as well. So
Yeah.
we kept the director's salary in the budget because we were committed to the position. I think what caused the delay is we were waiting on the results from the equity report that we had received, and we needed some time to analyze the results. And then we also got our second year of school climate research data in. So as you know, or you may not know, is once we got the equity report back, we contracted with William James University, Dr. Chris Taylor, and we worked as a team to go through the report and to make sure that we constructed a job description that responded to the data that we received from both the report and the school climate survey. I think there's been a little bit of feedback, and I think you even sort of wrote to me last week about some people worried about the title or disagreeing with the title or thinking it was a downgrade from the title. I don't know how to respond to all of those things. I think when I was initially involved in these conversations, they really wanted this individual to have positional authority, and I think this position does. And I think really our intentions are very similar to the position that existed, that this is a central office position that reports to the assistant superintendent. And again, this is a central office position that reports to the assistant superintendent that is assigned to the high school. So what we are trying to do is narrow the focus and then increase the impact on students and responsibility, because ultimately DEI work is the work of all of us, not the work of an individual. And I think that's really the intention here. And what the equity report showed, one of the primary findings was the district can have and does have positive intentions, but the students aren't necessarily feeling the impact of that or the classroom impact. And in order to get teachers to change their practice, we need to support them. And honestly, at the same time now, our teachers are asking for that support because they're in real time experiencing the changes in demographics of our student body. They want all students to be successful. They're working incredibly hard. They're incredibly talented, but we need to support them. So really what we discussed as a group, and what we discussed also with Dr. Chris Taylor, is what would be most effective for Burlington context, not everyone else, but in Burlington at this time, would be to have a district level position, again, a district level position, reporting to an assistant superintendent who's a former L student and a woman of color, to support teachers and making sure that their practice reflects the needs of the growing diversity of student that's in front of them. So I was actually very excited about the posting, and I continue to be very excited about the posting, and really looking at utilizing the data that we've collected to make sure that this position can be effective and also sustainable. That's my long-winded answer.
Great. So Dr. Chen, for those who might not be familiar, including myself, what is it that an instructional coach can do that's different maybe than what a director would do?
So one of the feedback that we've heard, and this comes also from my entry plan, and it also comes just from working with Dr. Chris Taylor, is that, again, what Dr. Conti had said, that this isn't just one person, it's all of us working together. And oftentimes when it's about a change initiative, right? When it comes top down, right? No one really likes to be told what to do, right? So we needed to restructure this position so that people felt as though we're working alongside with them. And especially when you're looking at it from the equity lens and you're looking at teaching and instructional practices, the best person suited for this is someone with those areas of expertise. So if you were to take a look at this previous job description that was created by folks and then take a look at this new job description, it is very similar, but I would just say that there's a greater focus when it comes to what was based on our school climate survey and also what was based on our equity report. And you know, we had all these wonderful parents and students and also teachers respond to, and parents included, respond to both surveys, right? So in my mind, if you're going to put out a survey and you're there collecting the voices of many people, you want to use those results and you want to use them in such a way that fits best for what our need is. And the fact is that we have a changing and ever-growing population of students, right? The fact is that equity work is more than just talking about racism, right? Its greatest impact is on student achievement and ensuring that all students, every single student who walks into Burlington, right, receives not only the best education, wherever they may be when they begin with, but they have the potential, right, to continue on with that, right? So this work, again, as Dr. Conti has stated, isn't, again, by one person. It's got to be all of us. So when we look at equity work, when we look at diversity work, when we look at inclusion work, what we do as educators, it's teaching and learning, right? And the greatest impact when it comes to student achievement is the teacher. They've done studies on that, right? Is the teacher and the culture and everything like that. So what is most important is that the person that we're choosing for this particular position, right, is going to qualify, have some work with DEI. Okay, so I want to clarify because there was an article that said that this person doesn't, that's not what was stated. What was stated is, yes, this person's going to have some work with DEI, but the work of DEI is more expansive, right? It involves looking at the curriculum. It involves looking at the instruction. It involves looking at the assessment pieces. It involves the culture piece. It involves the relationship piece. It involves looking at every single child as though this were my own child, right? And so it looks at where our data is. And where our data is, we need to look at our special education students. We need to look at every reporting group. So what it does in this particular job description, it just focuses the area more specifically on where we're going to get the greatest impact. And again, as I want to reiterate, as Dr. Conti has reiterated, this is not a downgrade by all means. If anything, what this time has allowed us to do is have a more focused area and a more plan of action of where we need to fine-tune our strategy, because this is such important work, because ultimately it impacts all of our students.
Thank you. Dr. Conti, you and I have spoken on this program, and you've spoken elsewhere across the district about the ways that DEI is not one and done thing. It's not one initiative. It's not one person. No. It's a years long, decades long commitment in lots of different areas of education. However, I think there's also a desire to have some sort of monitoring, measuring impact on the initiatives that are going on.
Sure.
So how do you perceive, a year into this person's job, 5 years into this person's tenure, how will you know if it's achieving the desired effect?
Well, I think we're going to continue taking some community measurements like our surveys that we've done and our school climate data, which we break out by different student, parent, and teacher demographics. I think that's important. I think we're also going to be looking at really looking at access and outcomes. And if you look at the curriculum work that Dr. Chen is leading in mathematics and literacy, it's really all about who's accessing our curriculum and what are the outcomes, because ideally you want to see the outcomes reflect the student population that you have as a whole. So are we seeing our English learning students accessing our higher level academic courses to the same percentage that they're represented in the overall population. So again, this person is going to be helping us with that data, but that's not this individual's work. I think they're going to be focused on it, but it's all of our work. We all have to own this, and we have to have the success through curriculum. And I just want to make sure I define curriculum, because many people think about curriculum only as content. And I always say to people that if we were fish, curriculum would be the water in which we swim. So it's everything. It's how a student experiences school. It's the cafeteria, it's recess, it's passing time, it is classroom time, it is school bus time. That's our curriculum, and that's really where our focus is, to make sure that all of our students have access initially, and that the outcomes that we're seeing reflected are based on effort, not predetermined by a culture, a quality, a characteristic, a disability, native language, that none of those things become predictors of outcome.
Yeah, yeah. Just a couple more questions on this. Dr. Chen, I think one of the flashes in the pan in Burlington on the issue of DEI was last summer. I think it was early June. There was an incident at the middle school that attracted a lot of attention and I think caused a lot of friction in the community around an LGBT sort of rainbow pride day. That was, there was some action against that in the middle school. Is that I think it was a moment where as a town we all went, what are we doing? Like, how did this, what circumstances led to this? What are all of the things that are happening around this? How do we hold all these things together? I'm trying to figure out what I'm even trying to ask, right? But I think that's a culture
Yes.
thing. And then curriculum, is that curriculum? Is that something else? Is that something that the DEI instructional coach will work on, those moments?
So like what Dr. Conti said, right, it's all encompassing, right? And so this is why this year we're spending a lot of time, and I want to say thank you to Chrissy Concession and all of the counseling department for all the work that they're doing when it comes to looking at, using through the Cassell model, for instance, all the social emotional learning, right? And that's the foundational piece, right? So if students don't feel safe, we're talking physically safe, emotionally safe, psychologically safe, right? That's a very important piece, and there's curriculum related to that, right? So right now we're in the midst of Wayfinder both at the elementary school and the middle school, and I know that Chrissy Concession and Amy Doty, who is our Director of Health and Physical Education, is working with the advisory program with Mark Sullivan, the principal there, in having a more, more definitive advisory program, right? So all of that is curriculum. So where I see this person working with us is also, again, working with the Director of Mental Health, for instance, to take a look at this, working with the Director of Special Education, working with the Director of English Education. So this is why when we have heard comments about this is not a central office position, I want to say this again. This is a central office position, right? Because you have to have access to what's going on at the district level, but you have to be housed in this particular role, at the high school, right? So you can work with the principal there. You can work with the instructional leadership team there to make the changes that are at the building level. Because if you're just high up here as a director and you're not, for instance, going into, I would call the trenches, in there with the teachers, in there working side by side with the principal and developing what is the best professional development, working with folks that do the club organizations with all of our affinity groups, then you're not going to have access to where we need to go. And I would say also to this particular piece, this particular coach, right, is also going to be working hand in hand with the other instructional coach that we happen to have. And we are
at the middle school, if I'm correct.
At the middle school. And we're very lucky to have someone like Sita, who happens to be, an instructor for the IDEAS courses that we offer, right? And I see this particular person also working with our mentoring program as well to share with our new teachers what is the Burlington way, as I often hear Dr. Conti, and our focus is on equity.
Sydney, if I could just jump in here
Please.
too, because I also think situations like the middle school are very difficult. Obviously, we do want all students to feel
Yeah.
safe, and we need to address that, but we can't lose sight of the fact that students are learning. The challenge here is to teach them empathy, and that's really where curriculum comes in place. But it also triggers other things that people are experiencing as adults in the community. Even if we have a director of DEI at the school system, they can't fix society or the issues or challenges in society. They can certainly try to improve it and make it better. But again, our focus needs to be on making sure that middle schoolers are making decisions and learning those life lessons, making some mistakes along the way. We can't sort of lose sight of who they are, what age they are, and we need to move forward. So again, this is a central office position that we are narrowing the focus to improve effectiveness, make sure that the work is sustainable, and our ideal goal here is to get all of the educators sort of initially at the high school to embrace DEI work and to improve DEI work because it's all of our work. The context has changed at the central office as well, because I could certainly understand having a person of color joining the central office to give us that perspective, but we have a permanent person of color now as part of our context. We are very sensitive to that. We are going to maintain our relationship with William James University. We are going to need to provide a context and an environment where whomever is supporting us, in particular in DEI, can also be successful moving forward. But again, our EL work is DEI work. Our special education work is DEI work. Our mental health work is DEI work. It is all encompassing, and it's all of our responsibility. And I think that it's a hot topic in town, which sort of bleeds over, and there's a lot of adult concerns that I think pose challenge for us to address in our classrooms, right? So I think that's what we're trying to balance. But again, we couldn't be taking this more seriously. This couldn't be any more of a priority. You know, you can say the delay in posting was, you can place whatever intention that you want on it. What I'm telling you the intention was for us to go about it very carefully, precisely, to look at our data and to make sure that we're building a way to successfully move this forward. That's the reasoning.
And if I could add to that, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Conti, for also bringing an outside perspective to this. I mean, I learned so much from Dr. Chris Taylor, right, who does this work for the state, right? And so sometimes when you have an outside person who sees a bigger scope, right, she was really instrumental in helping us narrow down our focus, because she basically said, okay, you know what you guys in the business are, right? You're in the business of teaching and learning, right? So this position needs to be focused on teaching and learning, because parents care about academic achievement and academic growth. So the focus, so then we realized, oh my gosh, and taking a hard look at our data, both in the equity report and also our school climate survey, and really doing a deep dive in it, we needed to make or think about a job description in which there was a very strategic plan of action, right? So how is this particular person, whoever he or she might be, how is this person going to fit in the team? How is this person going to help propel the district-wide initiative? How is this person going to impact student achievement? So again, I go and I say that, and I wasn't here, so I don't understand maybe all the politics that are involved, but equity does remain our #1 priority at Burlington Public Schools. And the best service, right, that we can all do as educators is to ensure that the impact of what we're doing is on our kids, right? That the achievement, that children have the opportunity to achieve at the highest level wherever they come in, right? And that's what we're taking a very hard look at when it comes to our curriculum reviews, our curriculum audits. And this is why this person, right, has to be both at the central office and at the building level, and has to be focused on looking at data, has to be focused on professional development, has to be able to be a team collaborator, and just working with all of us and various community members and pushing this thing forward. So it's not just a one person doing it, it's all of us doing this together.
Yeah, and Sydney, again, this goes on and on. I'm sorry, there's no simple simple answer to
I mean,
this,
it's complicated.
but it is a priority, and we do need to pay attention to it. We do need to listen. I'm not saying we have everything figured out, but we have worked carefully to move forward.
Right, and I mean, presumably there's an ongoing sort of focus into the future as well around fine-tuning the approach, figuring out what works, troubleshooting, as there is with any, with anything. But last question on this, and then we will move on.
Yes.
Super briefly, this was listed as a one-year position. Is there an intention to sort of check in after a year? What's going on there?
It's meant to be an ongoing position, and again, I think we're posting it as a 1 year because that's how we post positions, but it's meant to be an ongoing position.
Gotcha.
And like any position, we'll look at the effectiveness, and we'll maybe, if we have to make an adjustment, we'll make an adjustment. But no, this is meant to be an ongoing support position.
Do you guys want to talk about sports?
Yes, please.
It has been kind of an amazing season for a couple of our teams. Specifically, I've been watching the girls hockey team. They just won in the Sweet 16, 8-0 against Plymouth South as of this taping. Best season record ever, I believe.
19-1, I think. Is that true? I think.
Oh God, you're see you've got more info than I have. What do you have to say to those athletes, both of you, either of you?
I can tell you that I'm just very proud, and I say also because of also their sportsmanlike behavior as well too. That's what makes our student athletes extraordinary. They're both athletes and they're students, and they carry themselves with pride. And they're very kind human beings. Very proud of them.
I can't add to that. Again, I would say that. I would say the same thing. I'm just excited for their coaches and coaching, and their parents work so hard to give their kids these opportunities. So it's exciting when it all works out.
Yeah.
And then I was at the basketball game on Friday, which was a great playoff atmosphere, full stands. Our students, again, who were cheering, did a nice job. Our athletes, again, did really well. Coaches all worked hard, so it was just a great atmosphere for a high school game and for the students who attended.
It's a fun time of year for that.
It is.
Yes.
It is a fun time of year.
Last question. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something else?
No.
Okay. Last question, and then I'll let you guys go. February 28th, the MSBA approved Fox Hill to move into schematic design.
It's exciting.
We heard that the designers are starting to shape where the doors and windows are, where the sports fields are going to be at that site. What are you paying attention to? What's exciting to you about this stage of the process now?
Well, I think the building's starting to take shape. So what I always say is, you want the building to reflect the expertise and excellence of the people who work inside of it. And so what's most exciting for me is, right now, the physical plant of Fox Hill can be a bit of a limiting factor, and what the designers are putting together now are a building that better suits the teachers who are inside of it. So, adjacencies, appropriate spacing, that's what's really exciting. I think we're having lots of community conversations about whether we have one softball field or two, and all that stuff will work itself out, working with Park and Rec. Again, working with the planning board about where the access things are. All that stuff's important, but what's most exciting for me is seeing providing an appropriate space for the talented teacher and kid that we have in that building is what's exciting for me.
Amazing. Okay, I am going to wrap this up soon, but we so rarely get to talk to you, Dr. Chen. So just in a minute or so, what's something that you're working on in your world with curriculum, with the Journey to Cares, that you're really excited about, very briefly?
There's so many things we're working on, and I would say that the math curriculum review is something that I'm really proud of, especially the teachers and administrators who sit on that particular team that are working with Dr. Kateri Thunder. As we're looking at the pathways, for instance, we are also looking at, and this will be probably coming more so down the pipeline, at looking at whether or not Algebra 1 is going to be in the middle school. And as you know, if we move forward with that, what's going to do, it's going to impact both at the elementary level and also at the high school level as well too, the opportunities for all students. And so to me, that's very exciting, because anytime you you have a group of amazing educators who represent all the way from pre-K all the way to high school, you really get varying points of view. So that work has been very exciting. And just to look at what we can continue to build for all students here at Burlington Public Schools. So it's just neat stuff. And then I want to also give a shout out to Leroy Wong and also Dennis Villano. Thank you, Dennis Villano, because they're really looking into a lot of stuff. We're doing a lot of pilots with Magic AI, which is the artificial intelligence. And then there's another type of reality. So instead of that reality, what is that reality called? I always get it.
The XR,
the XR, what is it?
Well, the
thing with the
augmented vision,
like augmented reality.
Yeah.
So,
And we've already done quite a few things with that. But I just think any single time that you start looking at that, that's just very exciting for kids.
Well, very cool. Thank you both for being here, Dr. Lisa Chen, Dr. Eric Conti. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
my pleasure.
Thank you.